2020, if there is anything that you're trying to show us, get us to understand, want us to do, please make it clear in the month of September, because you're already doing way too much. You gave us a pandemic. You took several legends away from us. Most recently, Chadwick Boseman. You took the Black Panther away from us. I don't know what else you want us to do 2020, but you need to give us a sign. We barely made it through level 8 of Jumanji. I don't think we're prepared to go through level 9. What's going on, everybody? This is Dorian, back again for another episode of the Combos in the Park podcast. For those that have continued to join us, I thank you and I congratulate you for sticking through us with this journey. For anyone that is new and joining us, I appreciate you giving us a chance. Take a listen and just get some point of views from a different perspective on a lot of topics. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Chadwick Boseman recently passed due to a fight with colon cancer. And to say that it shocked me when it happened, when I found out, is an understatement. When someone of that status and as legendary and has made an impact the way that he has, and, you know, not to say I know him personally, but from the first time I saw him play Jackie Robinson in 42 to playing James Brown and Thurgood Marshall, and then finally showing up in the Marvel Universe, a comic universe that I've loved ever since I was a kid. And I knew about the Black Panther, and just seeing him on screen and just the way that he played that role to a T was just amazing. Just to see him that in Civil War, and then when I found out that they were, you know, giving him his own movie, and just the stellar, you know, direction of Coogler, and, you know, just everything else, and all the cast members in Black Panther, you know, that to have that kind of image of not just black people or a black person, but just the way a black society, you know, just to see a different side of it than what we normally see depicted in American movies is, you know, something that lasts forever. I mean, it's pretty much, you know, you could tell best by the way social media is reacting to his passing. I mean, it's something that's going to last forever. And we're not going to, I mean, yeah, we may have someone else that can fill the shoes, or, you know, have Shuri come in, you know, to be the new Black Panther, but just not to have Chadwick Boseman in another Black Panther film is something. And for him to be as strong as he has been, where he was fighting through that for the last 4 years, you know, is something to be recommended by, and it's truly an inspiration. And if it hasn't inspired you in any way, shape, or form to want to do better, or to want to be able to push through the tougher situations that you have in your life, then I don't know what other sign to give you. I mean, just from that alone, I mean, again, to do all those action scenes, and, you know, to do the things that he's did in those movies, and, you know, still fighting, you know, something every single day, it's just amazing. It's just amazing to me. You know, my condolences to his family, to his close friends, and to all his fans that are still mourning and grieving and dealing with the pain and the loss. You know, definitely for those, you know, Chadwick Boseman will be missed. But even with the passing of Chadwick Boseman, 2020 has shown me one big thing, and it is defining of expectations. When it comes to our society, when it comes to our nation, even when it comes to certain things as work or school, we have these expectations. And I think it is harder now with the accessibility that we have to resources and information. I think it is harder for certain people, certain corporations, even people close to us to kind of fit those expectations. And I say that because of the simple fact of, with it being September, a lot of kids are starting back with school. And of course, the nation's been split in regards to how, you know, school's going. Our president wants the kids to go back into the schools physically. A lot of states and a lot of different cities have chosen to go with full-on schools. Some areas have done hybrid. Some people are doing all virtual. And to think that, things would be in order before the school year started for a lot of these people, especially virtual, I think the expectations have been shot real low. And I think it's pretty much proven that when it comes to certain things, we can never be as prepared as we may think that we can be. Even though my daughter's not with me, I've heard tales of the school county that she's in now is having issues with virtual schooling. Even back in Mobile, Alabama, I've gotten word of several stories of the virtual, things not going well. And I think we're just not being well prepared. Not to say that we could easily be prepared because of the pandemic, but yet again, with a lot of cities and a lot of schools, especially when the pandemic started, we went virtual. So that was kind of like the test market, so to say, on how to deal with virtual schooling. And as time went on, and, we more so adopted Zoom, for pretty much everything, for work, for family meetings, and now, for school. I think it's something that we should have played around with more and to be more prepared in dealing with. Because at the end of the day, we still have to give these kids something to do and something to learn. And if we're not prepared to keep those young minds enriched in something, then we're already going to lose them more than what we're probably already losing them with in regards to everything that's going on in this country. Now, when I say expectations as far as corporations, there's a bigger thing that I've been thinking on and been dealing with. And even with this pandemic, again, a lot of companies had to change the way that they do certain things. A lot of companies had to change the way that they measure certain aspects of, people's jobs and everything else, because you can't do it in the same way that we were prior to the pandemic. Because again, for a lot of places, especially when you're dealing with certain numbers, you can't, for some businesses, you can't go into people's homes, as easily as you could before, without, of course, all the safety measures, asking, if anyone's been sick, making sure that, you wear your own proper protective equipment as far as masks, gloves, anything of that nature. So it becomes harder. And the biggest thing that we try to tackle with that is, again, we try to measure something. Companies have to have something to measure something by in order for them to prove that they're spending the right amount of money in a certain area, so that way, that enough profits and revenue can be made to make it seem like, it's a valuable thing. So when it comes to certain decisions like that, and with the way that a lot of companies are dealing with this pandemic and dealing with, the way that we're doing certain things, I think the expectations in that regard as well is something where we falter short at. And trying to force these new expectations on people without having certain things set in place, it kind of defaults and it kind of saltens the idea, and it doesn't make people buy into it all the way. Prime example, let's just say, for example, you have a company where they have the expectations of providing a quality service. Well, when you want to gauge that quality service, where do you normally try to do it? Of course, a lot of these bigger corporations will go for, a bigger market. If it works in a bigger market, then it's going to work everywhere. Well, that could be the case if you're only focusing on bigger markets, or you're looking at bigger cities. Like, let's say if you test something in Atlanta, then the same things that you test in Atlanta will probably work the same way in New York, Chicago, LA, DC, something of that nature, big cities like that, because the infrastructure is already built in those bigger cities, especially when you're dealing, for quality service, like let's say either internet or something. But when you're trying to, in the ways of track your employees for certain things, and when it comes to GPS being involved, yes, you're going to have those things that you can track easily in the bigger system because, again, the infrastructure is there. It's built to cover, satellite signals and radio signals to that nature, to where, you're not going to have that, those kind of down areas, or you're not going to run into that many dead zones. So, yes, you're going to have good connectivity. But when you're trying to focus that on a smaller or quote-unquote rural market, you're going to miss a lot of areas because, again, you're not going to have that same infrastructure. Yeah, it may be built up in, the key areas of that city, but what about the extended reaches of that city? What about the areas where you're not going to get good cellular service? What about the areas where you're not going to get, good radio signals out there? You're losing a lot of people that way because, again, you're trying to hold an entire company to one standard when you don't just cover big cities. You cover both big and small cities. So yes, you're missing out a big quality, and you're trying to hold the people in the rural areas to the same standard as the bigger cities, when that can't be done because they're facing two totally different landscapes, two totally different situations. And you can't gauge it just on one thing without testing the other one properly. If you're going to test in a bigger market, you also need to test in a smaller market to make sure that the smaller markets can at least somewhat meet up to the standard that you're looking for in those bigger markets. And again, that comes back to expectations. But enough on that soapbox. I cannot go through the rest of this episode without talking about some of the recent events that have happened in regards to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the shooting of Jacob Blake. For me to watch that video, as much as we see this stuff happening in 2020, and the more that we see it, the more that I fear that we're going to be more desensitized to those kind of things. But that's something I do not want to see happen at all. But it is very telling. And yes, you will still have plenty of people that say, oh, he shouldn't have resisted. He shouldn't have went back to his vehicle. He shouldn't have did this. He shouldn't have did that. And then there were reports coming out saying that he had a knife. There were reports saying that he had a possible, gun in the vehicle. But even with those reports, even with all this going on, excuse me, it's still the same thing. It's still people of color are getting treated way more differently than, shall we say, the norm, the white citizen. And, again, for someone that was not raised to hate any particular race, creed, color, sexuality, or anything else like that, it's hard for me to see. It's hard for me to try to say these kind of things and say that all people are created equal when we're not treated that way. And it sucks because we have this for the younger generation to fight. I will say that I'm glad that the younger generation is stepping up and being on the front lines for these protests and everything else. But I also don't want to take away from those same protests, because we do, and I don't think people are aware of this, there are going to be people that will take advantage of this, just like any other opportunists when it comes to certain situations. Just like you got someone that will take advantage of a supermarket having, a wet floor to get money for a lawsuit, and knowing they got the signs up saying it's a wet floor, but they'll still go in that area and slip and fall, try to get a lawsuit, being opportunists. There's going to be opportunists with these protests too. As many people that there are out there trying to peacefully protest, there are going to be anarchists and anyone else trying to take the main factor away from what these protests are standing for, to show that that these protests are not peaceful, to try and paint another narrative towards what's actually going on. And for anyone that does not think that that is happening, then I don't know what candy painted, rose tainted world that you're living in, but you are sadly mistaken. As much as people protest, there's going to be people that stand up against it and try to turn it into something else. But I digress off my point. So again, you have Jacob Blake that was shot. When we have several instances caught on video, not just in the United States, but overseas as well, in other parts of different nations, where we have white citizens that are easily, calmly taken in. Most of them have firearms or have attacked the police, and they are treated with the most humanity that everyone should be treated with. And yes, there's going to be people that say, "Oh, well, they shouldn't be violent. They shouldn't try to resist arrest and all this other stuff." But again, when you have two different standards, when you have a person of color doing it, 9 times out of 10, from what we've seen in 2020, I'm not saying this is always true, but from what we've seen in 2020, the larger stakes of it is person of color, even if you do comply, or shortly, or anything else of that nature, the most violent actions are going to be taken against you as far as when it comes to the police to subdue us or what have you, or just straight kill us. When it is someone that is white, they're peacefully brought in, they're peacefully restrained. Don't see too many shots at them, no debilitating shots at them. They do their best to try to bring them in, and they usually walk away from the situation handcuffed, escorted wherever they need to go, and not as often seen with EMS taking them away in a stretcher. And again, I'm not saying this to put light on or say that the police system is bad. Well, I won't. The police system is bad in the history in which it was brought up. But to say that there are not good people in the system, I'm not saying that at all. I know there are plenty of good cops out there. But if the good cops are not doing their part to make the bad cops stand up and be held accountable for their actions, then it's bad all around. It's just like a piece of fruit that's molded. If you don't remove it from the rest of the bunch, that mold is going to seep on and grow onto the rest of the fruit. So now you have a whole batch of fruit that is molded and bad for consumption. Same standards apply. If we leave these bad cops in the system long enough, then guess what? They're corrupting the system even more than the way it was when it started. So with that being said, lead on to Kyle. I'm not even going to say his last name, but I see so many people defending, this guy or this kid, teenager, what have you, and saying, "Oh, he's a stand-up citizen. Oh, he's a patriot. He's this, he's that." When the facts remain, 17 years old, crossing state lines to quote unquote protect the business. Is it his business? Is it his business? No, not that I've seen from reports. Is it his family's business? No, not from what I've seen from reports. So you got him and a bunch of other quote unquote militia people coming into Kenosha to protect these businesses from rioters or quote unquote, they say protesters, but they're talking about people that are rioters and the anti-fascist people that are seeping into these protests. But he's there to protect a business with a firearm. And yes, I've seen reports saying that, he was shot at first. But regardless of whether he was shot at first, then again, he still killed multiple people. You can try and claim it as self-defense all you want, but again, I see the side of self-defense if that is the actual case. I haven't seen all the reports. Not saying I'm here to, give out all the news, but just from everything that I've seen from different outlets as well as social media, the timeline pretty much sits that, he won. Pretty much, let's just get this point blank out in the open. He shouldn't have been there trying to defend businesses. He shouldn't have been there. Not 17 years old. Again, they want to say that the protesters shouldn't have been out past curfew. Kyle shouldn't have been out past curfew. He should have been at home doing anything a normal 17-year-old would want to do. And I've seen reports of him, earlier in the day, I guess helping clean up in Kenosha. That's all well and good. Good for that. That's where he should have stayed. He shouldn't have taken arms. Shouldn't have taken arms for that, to stand with the militia people. Now you got more people dead. And again, he shot at people. Was he shot back in return by the police? No. There were reports earlier of the police giving him water and saying, "Thank you guys for being there." Again, militia people, or the way that they see it. And from what I've seen, again, I hate to throw race in this, but they were majority of white people. I don't think the police there would have shown the same kind of appreciation and effort and claims not to, be so resistant towards them if it was a quote unquote militia of black people. I just don't see it. And as far as I mean, I this tears me. This situation truly does tear me. Not in the fact of what went down. I believe that Kyle should be held to the highest court of law. I think he should be tried as an adult, not as a kid, for what he did. But again, the nation is showing itself its true colors. It is. And for as many people that say they are not racist, I think we think those voices need to be heard even more, especially now where we have a president who's anyone who is smart enough to realize what's going on. He baits into the racism. He baits into fear. That's how he got a lot of his constituency. Now, there may be some people that feel for and understand, what he, quote unquote, may have pushed for at the beginning. But to keep himself in office, he's baiting on fear. He's baiting on everything else. There's ads of him showing, cities burn and saying if you let Biden, get control, then this is what the United States is going to be there for. But the odd thing is, he's showing pictures of the America that he's currently in control over. So it's the best way I could put it. It's hypocrisy, point blank and simple. It's hypocrisy, and we are starting to get fed up as black people. I know I am for sure. I'm getting tired of trying to save face and go throughout these days and act like I'm well and fine. I get frustrated the more and more I see these situations pop up. I get frustrated the more I see actions taken, and I get more frustrated the more I hear people say, oh, blue lives matter, all lives matter. If all lives matter, why are so many black people dying due to police brutality or other means? If all lives matter, why are we the ones that were being lynched because we talked to a white woman? Why, if all lives matter, why did a whole black neighborhood have to be destroyed because of hatred? This has not happened just once. It's happened twice. It's happened with Black Wall Street, and it's happened in Philly. If all lives matter, again, why did we just not just 60 years ago pretty much be able to go to the same schools as white people, as white children, white students? If all lives mattered, why were we brought in chains? Why were we made to work on plantations? If all lives mattered, why were we considered 3/5 of a human being? And I'm talking about black people and people of color. If blue lives matter, again, there's been some debates over this, but if you decide to be a cop, it is your choice. You chose to live that life. You knew the dangers that were coming with it. Same as anyone that joins the military. We understand that there's going to be dangers. We know that there's going to be situations where our life is at risk. Our life is at danger. But the only difference, and I keep saying, I don't know how many times I've said this on this podcast, but there are varying degrees. When it comes to military, we have rules of engagement. I don't see any records of police having to go through any kind of training where it's rules of engagement. Yes, they're taught how to de-escalate situations, but for some reason, I don't think that training is being done enough. And again, this is going out for all the bad cops out there. If there are good cops, they're not showing up in enough numbers to outweigh the bad cops in these situations. I'm sorry, but we do need some change. We need change soon. And for all the people that say that defunding the police, is something out there that we just want to get rid of the police altogether? No, we know that police is there's going to have to be a need for a force to keep order. There's going to have to be. All we are saying is that the police should not get all these funds to just quote unquote be local military. That's not their job. Their job is to serve and protect. If they feel like they have too much weight on them, then yes, we need to defund. Cops should not have to feel the need to be a social worker, someone that helps, people get off drugs. We have other resources for that. All that should not be lumped into the police hands. All they should do is worry about people speeding, worrying about people, shooters and other and things of that nature. And if there's training that needs to be redone, then let's work on getting better training for these officers. Again, I think before anyone joins the police department, there needs to be a stiffer way of doing psychological checks. Same way that the government looks for background checks as far as security clearance and stuff like that, I think it needs to be sterner on the police, especially with social media the way it is now. If your social media is plagued with hints of racism and stuff like that, you should not be on the police force, because all you're doing now is you're adding more power and more fuel to that fire of hatred, because now he has the law, or quote unquote, as he feels, he has the badge and the law to cover his or her actions now when it comes to people that they hate, whether it be blacks, Asians, any other people of color other than white, or whether they hate sexuality. They have power now. That should not be the case. We need to build a better America overall. And I don't think it's going to happen with what we have as far as Democrat and Republicans all together. I think the two-party system needs to just be deconstructed all the way down, and we need something else. We need a better and stronger third party to stand amongst all this, because what we have now, we just have people lining pocket. We have people looking for money to guide our nation instead of looking for the betterment of its people. All we're looking at is the bottom line. The United States is nothing more than a big major corporation. That's all it is in my eyes. And we need better for that. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did, but I am more than welcome to keep this conversation going. Feel free to add your comments on any other social media that we have. Look us up on Facebook. Look us up on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and anywhere that you get your podcast from. I'm more than welcome to look at that. I look at the comments often. So please thank everyone for listening out for this podcast. I know it seemed like it was a little bit of me just rambling on, but I just had to get that off my chest. I had to get these feelings out. So hopefully we can get back to a more civilized podcast for the next episode. But again, it's Dorian signing off. Please, everyone out there, take care of yourselves and each other.